If you want to succeed, you have to be prepared to take risks.
Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention podcast, a podcast helping women in career and life transitions achieve clarity on their next steps so they can transform uncertainty into an energizing next chapter. I'm your host, Kavita Ahuja, and the founder of It's My Time Now Coaching. If you're wondering what's next in your career or life, you are in the right place. Through solo and guest episodes, you'll gain practical tips, tools, and inspiration to help you uncover blocks, gain confidence, and be, do, and have what you want. I rediscovered myself after the age of 50, and I know you can too. It's my time now to help you do just that. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of the Midlife Reinvention podcast, and welcome to September. For those of you who are in North America, today is Labor Day, and that always signals a new start to the year, school year, new beginnings for many, and a bit of a feeling of excitement, but also sadness for the end of summer. I hope you had a fantastic summer, and I wish you and your families so much happiness and success in the coming months. We have some wonderful things planned for you this fall with some inspiring and informative podcast episodes, both solo and interview. I'd love to hear from you. What are you struggling with right now as you may be transitioning in your career or life? What topics would you like me to explore so that you can learn more about? This podcast is for you, so please let me know what is most important to you so I can serve you in my best way. So for today, if you've ever wondered why some women seem to succeed despite barriers in their way like societal limitations or their own self-doubt, this episode will be sure to inspire you. Imagine starting in a small rural town and rising to become one of Canada's most powerful women. How does someone achieve that? You will learn exactly how in today's episode, where I will speak with the wonderful Clare Beckton. In this episode, you will discover the power of being open to opportunities, even the unexpected ones. Learn how to overcome self-doubt and societal limitations to find your passion and purpose, and gain insights on how to develop leadership skills that create real change, regardless of gender biases. So hit play now, my friend, to learn how you can start from anywhere and still be a success. It's all up to you and what you decide to do with your life. And don't forget to stay till the end for the key takeaways. Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention podcast, a podcast for women in transition in their careers and life. I interview incredible women for this podcast who share their stories of reinvention and who will give you their advice on how to overcome the obstacles in your way to reach your vision for yourself in your next stage of life. This week is no exception, as I'm excited and privileged to have on the show today Clare Beckton. Clare has won the WXN Top 100 Most Powerful Women Hall of Fame, the WBN Lifetime Achievement Award, along with so many other awards. She is the author of Own It, Your Success, Your Future, Your Life and the Media and the Law in Canada, and Section 15 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. She was a law professor at Dalhousie Law School, Assistant Deputy Attorney General of Aboriginal Affairs, Justice Canada, and Head of Status of Women Canada. Clare was also the founding director of the Carleton University Centre for Women in Politics and Public Leadership, and is an entrepreneur, speaker, media commentator, mentor, and coach, and an award-winning advocate for advancing women's leadership, diversity, and inclusion. Wow. It's so impressive. And Claire, and I'm so very honored to have you on the podcast.
It's a delight to be here, Kavita. Thank you for inviting me because there's
Yeah.
so many women going through so many of these challenges every day.
Yes. And that's exactly why I wanted to connect with you, because from your experience and your life, I'm sure there's a lot to dive into. So, Claire, as I just read, you have had an extremely, and you're still having an extremely impressive career. And as I just described, when we met, you told me a little bit about your upbringing.
Mhm.
And if you could share for the audience the story of where you started, and I understand what were some of the lessons you learned. I understand you had come from a fairly poor family in Saskatchewan as a child. So
Yes,
basically, how did you get from there to where you are? And tell us the lessons that you've learned along the way.
right. And I would just say right now, it's not about career, it's about passion and purpose.
Yes.
So that's where I am in my life right now. But where I started was the first 12 years of my life. My parents had a small mixed farm in Saskatchewan. We lived in, basically it was a 3-room shack, and literally it was the whole, there was no running water, no electricity. And when it rained, the water would come through the holes in the roof and we would put out pans. So we had our own little orchestra, right? But we had all of this space. I had 3 brothers and we had all this space to run around and play. And we had food. My parents would grow most of their food and my mother would can and put things away. And so we didn't have much money, but we didn't have a lack of food, which was one of the good things. But what I learned when I was 12 years old, we did move into the small village and we still didn't have running water, but we did have electricity. So you could watch television. And it was there that I really started watching shows like Perry Mason, where I really was intrigued by the law and what it could do. And even at 12, I was observing in our small village how power was not shared, but how it was in the hands of some of the, maybe I wouldn't say wealthier, but what we call power families in the community. And it was men. And so I felt at that time, I'm not up for the traditional roles that were available to women then, which was basically a secretary or a teacher or a nurse. And there weren't a lot of role models around. So, but I decided I wanted to be a lawyer. And I wanted to be a lawyer because I felt I could make a difference. I could obtain power and use it in a different way. So that's how I started. And then I didn't plan on being a law professor. I planned on being a defense attorney. But when I did well in law school, my law professor said to me, you need to go to graduate school. You should teach. So there I was, being open to possibility. And that was one of the things I learned along the way. You need to be open to possibilities because I hadn't thought about it. And if I had said no, I wouldn't be where I am today. But I said, well, why not? I had no money, obviously. I didn't have money for law school. I had to work hard and get scholarships to make it to law school. And now for graduate school, there was money and I ended up going to the US. That was a great experience. And I'm glad I did. And then they were looking for women law professors at the time. So I was being courted by a number of schools and I ended up going to Dalhousie. And the reason I went to Dalhousie was because they were so persistent. They rolled out the red carpet. The dean was very persistent. So I learned along the way, and from growing up on a farm, I learned about adversity because you never know what's going to happen from one year to another when you're farming, whether there's going to be hail or there's going to be drought or whatever there's going to be. So I learned that you have to continue on no matter what. You have to think about what's coming, prepare yourself for it, and be determined on it. I'm a very determined person. So that's a couple of things I learned along the way.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I love that analogy about learning from growing up in the farm and learning about adversity. It's funny how our childhood teaches us so many things, and the things that you also said about following, it's about passion and purpose. And then the reason that you really pursued law was because you wanted to use the power that you saw that was not being used in the way that you thought should be used in a different way. So I love that. That's a great lesson. Thank you for sharing that.
I was just going to add one thing that I forgot to mention is what's really important is what I learned. You can start from anywhere and still be a success. It's all up to you and what you decide to do with your life. And so people who don't have a lot of money or don't have access to the best quality education, if you're determined enough, you can make success no matter how you define it. And when success is all in how you define it.
Yes. And I find that sometimes this is going to be one of my other questions, but I find that especially for women. Like I know that you said that when you were growing up, you didn't want to follow the same traditional roles. So what happens, I believe, and maybe you can give us a little bit of advice, is when as women, like they're looking to do what they're passionate about, as according to what you said, your passion and your purpose, especially at this kind of this midlife stage, they're held back, right? They're held back by so many things. And from what you just said, you can find a way. But what would you say, like, what would you say to these women who are like, I don't think I can do it. I'm not good enough, or I'm not qualified enough, or I'm all these not enough. What would you say to those women based on your going for your experience, right?
I would say start with I am enough. I am
Yes.
enough. We shouldn't be accepting what others might say that I'm not enough or I'm not good enough or I don't have what it takes. If you really want to do something, you'll find a way no matter what. But we also hold ourselves back many times. It's not only that there are challenges put in our path, but we hold ourselves back by saying, I'm not good enough, or I can't do this. Or I've heard this so many times saying, oh, I just need a little bit more education here, or I need this, that before I take this role. And I say to women many times, no, you don't. You're ready now. You
Mm-hmm.
just have to go for it. Because
Mm-hmm.
men don't do that. They don't
No.
say, oh, I need another course or I need another this or that. They just go for it.
Yeah.
Whether they're qualified or not.
Yes. Yes. That's so true. And I hear that as well. It's like, oh, I just think I need to get another qualification and then I'll be ready. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you're ready now. You can, not make it up as you go, but you've got it already. So I always tell women to celebrate their strengths, celebrate what they have and all the great experience that they've already gained. So yeah, so that's wonderful. This is about transitions in life
Yeah.
and what we learn from them. So tell us about some of the major transition points in your life and in your professional and maybe in your personal journey. And maybe what are some, maybe if we could boil it down, I know it might be hard, but some, like maybe three main things women can learn from your transitions.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I would say right off the bat is to remain open and be curious, because things will come along that you didn't anticipate. And you have to be ready to say, well, you know what? Why not? I was a full professor at this point, and when I had a grant to go to, I was going to go to France and do a book on European human rights. And then I got an offer from the federal government to come and do the equality review, so that when Section 15, which is the equality guarantees in the charter, were going to come into force, all the federal government legislation had to be examined and then make recommendations to what needed to be changed. And this was a complete out of the blue. At the same time, the McDonald Royal Commission on the economy wanted me to be part of them. So I had a chat with my husband, who was just graduating from university. He'd gone back to university, and we had a young boy. And we said, well, you know what? Why not? The book will be there if I want to write it later, but this opportunity will never be there again. So we moved to Ottawa, planning to stay for 2 years. This was the deal. But I'm still in Ottawa many years later. And that because when I went to leave, they said, well, no, we really want you to stay. And so then I progressed in the Department of Justice. I had many different roles. The first one after my human rights logs was going to RCMP, where people say, why are you doing that? You're a human rights lawyer. I said, well, I'm much more than a human rights lawyer. And so we had to think of yourself as bigger than that, you know. And so I'm willing to take a risk, because there is a risk going to another area you don't know much about. And that's an important lesson, is if you want to succeed, you have to be prepared to take risks. And of course, sitting and doing nothing, as we both know, is also a risk, because I won't be fulfilled if I don't get out there and do things. So we need to take a risk. That doesn't mean you have to take foolish risks, but you do need to take risks. And then when I was moved from there to fisheries and then human resources, and then the assistant deputy attorney general role came up, and it was Aboriginal, and I had said, I don't really want to do that when I'd rather do immigration. But the women in my department said, you're the only one that can probably win that. So I felt an obligation in a sense. And I was so glad that I kept an open mind about it, because I loved that role. I was in it for 6 years. I built the portfolio, and I learned taking that risk and not closing doors really paid off, because it was an opportunity to really grow my leadership, to learn a lot, and to meet some amazing and wonderful people over the years I was there. So that was a major transition. And then at the end of 6 years, I had an opportunity and the government was sending someone of the senior levels to go to Harvard to do a mid-career master's in public administration. I just had to get accepted to Harvard and get the Fulbright, and then I could be accepted by the government.
That's all you had to do.
And you know what was good?
Nothing.
You had to do this test, including mathematics. Well, I was always good at math, but I hadn't done some of this for many, many years. So I had to study like crazy even to get a respectful mark, even though they said, don't worry about it for the midterms. It's what you've done with your life that counts. But anyway, I did succeed, and I got the Fulbright, and I went to Harvard for a year, and it was quite a transition. So again, taking that risk, it was a real transition to go from being a senior leader to being a student.
Yeah.
But this was a program where you had so many people from around the world. It was a wonderful experience. I have a huge network. And that's one of the things I want to say. Networks are important, and you have to build them as you go along, because your networks will open doors for you. You can open doors for them, but it will bring you into contact with so many people from different backgrounds, different experiences. And that is truly important, is to have that network. And so it also means like you can expand your skills. I never thought, quite frankly, that I'd be going back to university full time, because I'd done all those years in university. I said, oh, no, I'm done now with university. I'll keep on learning, because continuous learning is so important, but I'm not going back. But then this opportunity presented itself. So I learned, never say never, because that's what you're going to end up. Just say it. So anyway, I went to Harvard, and it was a great experience, and I came back. I did a special initiative for a couple of years, and then was asked to take on Status of Women, which was not in my plans, but it moved away from law into public policy. And Status of Women, it was a great role, but very challenging. And at the end of a period, I just didn't agree with the minister I was working with. So I jumped ship completely without any plans. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I had to get out of there. So I did. And that again was taking a big risk, right? Okay, what am I going to do? I haven't made plans. Most people, when they're thinking about retirement or whatever, they make plans, but I didn't. But I said to myself, I coach other women and other people about transitions. So I'll just do that for myself. So again, I learned about expanding your skills, and it's about growing your skills and using them in other ways. Like, because when I left, I thought, okay, what skills do I have? Are they really applicable in so many other areas? And you have to decide, what do you want to do? What do you want to do?
Yes.
Some people will rush right into a job. Said, I don't want another job. I want to create a path that's mine, and is not a job in that sense.
So this is what I got out of what you said. So in terms of lessons, so say why not, right? Remain open and curious, take risks. And I love that when you said, doing nothing is also a risk. It's so important. Don't close your doors. Networks are so important. As I know, and I've totally changed careers. And if I didn't have a network that I built, I wouldn't be anywhere right now. Right?
Exactly.
And expand your skills. And I love that, because using your skills in other ways that maybe you've never thought even possible. And that's where what I really believe in is that especially if you're going through a career transition at this stage, it's like we've been so used to maybe doing one thing our whole life, and then we think we can't do anything else. But how about looking at how are these skills transferable is like an overused word, but it's more like how can we expand into what we're passionate about and create our own path, as you said. So fantastic. That is amazing. And so, Clare, you along the way, along all these great, beautiful transitions that you've gone through, you've also achieved many awards and accolades. And so now now that you're focused, why is it that you're focusing now on the advancement of women in leadership? What has led that?
I've always been an advocate for equality, and that has been important. And when I was at Status of Women, we developed 3 pillars in terms of advancing women. One of them was economic prosperity. The second was ending violence against women on the ground. And as I thought about it, and when we were developing this, I said, but none of this can really happen until women are in positions of decision-making and leadership, because when men are the only ones in those decision-making, they don't think of all of the perspectives. After all, women are 50%, more than 50% of the population. So there's missing a whole perspective. So when I left the government and really started to think about what I wanted to do with the next phase of my life, I said, where I want to put my emphasis is on women's leadership and empowering women to take on those roles of leadership, to be brave, to put themselves forward and to take on the role wherever it is, whatever industry or whether it's a nonprofit or government, women are needed in those roles. So, and that's when I founded the Center at Carleton for Women in Politics and Public Leadership, where we did some really interesting research. And then I merged that center with another one, but it was in that process that we developed the Advancing Women in Leadership program, which is still doing.
Tell us about that and this program, Advancing Women in Leadership. What is unique about the program, and what, maybe as a aside as well, as what do you feel perhaps lacking right now in both the industry and in government around advancing women leaders that you're so passionate about?
Well, I think we started when I looked in 2014, realized that women didn't have specific leadership programs. They were generic leadership programs, and they didn't address some of the challenges that women were facing. And women needed a place where they could have this and feel safe, be able to discuss what those challenges and to build networks, because when women come on the program, they realize they're not alone in some of the challenges that they're facing. And that's been one of the biggest eye openers for many women, especially if they come from male dominated industries or places like military or police forces that have traditionally been male dominated. So the program really focuses on who you're being as a leader. And then it focuses on some of the key things that you need to be a successful leader, whether it's visioning or creating an inclusive workspace or networking, learning how to network, etc. And we started this in 2014, and it's still as relevant today because we know women continue to face challenges in the leadership roles. And we know a lot of women are leaving now. They're exiting out just before that executive level because they're still feeling there's a lot of challenges or obstacles, are not feeling satisfied. And I think it's really important when women feel their organization is not giving them what they need, is not recognized for their talent and their skills, or is promoting men faster than women, then being able to walk with your feet is a good thing because you're saying, I'm not prepared to change this. Because some organizations have places where people think they put the onus on women to make the changes, but that's not what can happen. In order to make the changes in organizations, the organization itself has to make the changes in how people are hired, how they're promoted, what are the biases that are implicit in the systems, because they're still there. Still the bias about what a leader should look like, how a leader should behave. We know there's still the residue of this decisive decision-making kind of looking leader who was, of course, male. And that's not what we want in the 21st century. It's a different kind of leadership. And so men and women need to focus or be focused on this people-centered leadership and creating inclusive spaces. So there's still a lot that organizations need to do in order to really get to that place where there's not these microaggressions, where there's still not unfairly judging women's talent and skills.
Yeah.
And we need men to be supportive of this. Men need to be allies. They need to be part of this because it's not about putting men down and raising women up. It's about raising women up so that you have this kind of equality. Because I know the best leadership teams I've led were men and women.
Yes. You mentioned, so would you say that the main ones that you just mentioned are they're not feeling satisfied and not being recognized for their skills and their accomplishments and not being promoted? Is there any other common challenges that you see?
Well, I mean, a lot of times it's not necessarily those challenges. Sometimes it's using your voice, being prepared to speak up, and confidence, having the confidence to do it, to be able to say, like, for example, one simple one, I could give you an example. One of the women came on the program and she had been afraid to ask her boss if she could come in a little bit later in the morning in order to drop her son off at daycare. Well, after the program, she went and asked. And he said, of course, you can. But she wouldn't have done it before the program. Or people might not have spoken up in meetings, because using your voice is so important for women. You have to be able to speak and have your voice heard in all of these places, whether it's meetings or whatever. So developing that confidence and saying, it doesn't matter if you're afraid, and fear is normal. you have to do it anyway. If you want to move forward, you have to act in spite of those fears or get right down to the bottom of those fears. A lot of times they're based on assumptions that aren't correct.
Yes.
So if we challenge our own assumptions and then say, okay, I'm going to do this. I mean, I know all my life I've done it. When I'm afraid of something, I know for the most part, I got to go and do it.
Yeah.
So I was I was very shy. I wouldn't even go and knock on somebody's door that I knew well. I'd be standing there. I'm not sure what I did. And so I entered the public speaking contest in school. And then I've always put myself in that place. I was terrified of flying. So what do? I learned to fly.
Yeah.
Say, okay, this is how flight works. I'm not going to follow this.
Yes. So these fears, and I talk about this a lot, is they're internal blocks that we create in our own minds. And I love that, using your own voice and confidence. I think lately I've heard a lot of talk, and I've studied a little bit about personal branding. How do we want to be seen? And it doesn't mean that you have to be an entrepreneur to have a personal brand. It's about how do you want to be seen in an organization, in the world, really. And it's really about using your voice and being authentically you. And so I think that to me is, when you're authentically you, then you have confidence in yourself, right? So I love that. I just wanted to get into a little bit more of those challenges, because yes, there's those challenges we talked about getting promoted and all that, but the real challenge is the ones that we put on ourselves.
Yeah. It's what is the story you tell about yourself? I mean, we do talk about that leadership program. What's your leadership story? And how you frame that story is going to be very influential in how you feel about yourself and how you're projecting yourself in the world, exactly as what you're saying. Because if we don't see ourselves as confident, then we're likely to act that way. But if we can see ourselves as leaders who are confident, and confidence for men and women doesn't have to be the same. It doesn't have to be out there bragging. It can be a quiet confidence. And we still need to be able to speak up when it's time to be able to speak up or put ourselves forward. But it is important, the story we tell about ourselves.
Yes.
Because like I had women say, oh, I'm an introvert. I said, well, is that what wholly defines you? And the answer is no, it's not. And so
there's nothing wrong with being an introvert either, right? So
it's perfectly fine.
Yes,
you have to know when to speak up and when.
Yes.
My very successful younger son is an introvert. He needs his time, and well, so am I actually. You just need to have that time alone to regenerate, whereas extroverts being out there.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. My son is too. It's funny. Yeah, but I love that, of using your voice of confidence. And what is your leadership story? Those are great. So Clare, also, in addition to being an advocate for women in leadership, you're also a champion in diversity and equity and inclusion. I know this is all kind of related, but what are your thoughts about how has society kind of advanced in this area or not?
And I think it's really important that we say we don't want to leave men behind either. This is not about leaving men behind. It is about having equal playing fields, leveling the playing field so everybody has an opportunity to advance. And that hasn't been the case in the past. We have underrepresented groups who have not had the same opportunity. If you're a woman, for example, and then you're a woman of color, then you're at a greater disadvantage because the discrimination, whether it's implied or implicit, is greater than if you're not a woman of color.
What about ageism?
Ageism is another one that's very prevalent now. Ageism incredibly, because we're not looking at the wisdom, what's there with older people. I mean, the assumption is, okay, older people, they sit in their rocking chair or they go off and they do their things and they're not very valuable anymore. That's not the case. I think this generation of older people want to remain relevant. They want to use what they've learned in their life. And some of them have to continue working because they don't have the financial ability to step back. But I think if you need purpose, no matter what stage of your life, you need to have purpose in your life. And purpose may not be going to a bridge club or going golfing or whatever. For some people, that's great. But a lot of people want to continue to contribute. And some of the people give their best. I feel that, honestly, as I get older, I'm contributing more than I did in my younger career because I have more to give.
Yes.
And so I think that's really important, is that
Yes,
we
yes,
get rid of the isms, whether it's
yes,
sexism, ageism, or
yes,
racism.
yes,
We need to deal with people as we find them, as
yes,
individuals have. Everybody has something to contribute. It's a question
yes,
of what
yes.
is,
It's inclusion, right? Inclusion is the
it's
main thing.
inclusion.
Inclusion. Yes.
And when I see
Looking,
people saying, when you have something to do in your organization, you give a busy person, give it to a busy person. You think about that. Yes, that person will get it done. But what are you doing to the other people
yes.
in your organization? You're not growing them
Yeah.
because you're saying, oh, well, I only have confidence in this person or that
Because you're
person.
assuming the assumptions are there that this person, the other people can't do it, or yeah. So
Right.
it's the assumptions that really kill us, and I think that's so important. And it's interesting how you said that's kind of the reverse thing. People are the middle, and like the younger generation is now backlashing against these initiatives, which interesting. I never thought of it that way, but I guess it is
Yeah.
happening. Yeah.
Well, it is happening, and it's understandable in a way. Sometimes we go too far one way, and
Yes.
then we
Yes.
have to come back into balance.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
we definitely want to have everyone included. It's
Yes.
how we do it, and what's the messages that are sent out around that.
Yes. Yes.
It has to be done with intentionality and thinking of what you're doing in your organization, how you're going to ensure that everyone
Yes.
has their opportunity to advance or to achieve their aspirations, and how they can give their best contributions.
Mm-hmm. When we met, you had said to me something that stuck to me. You said that I'm rewired, not retired.
Yes.
And so I love that because, as you said, we rewire, we reinvent, we transition into different things. So maybe now you could tell us, what are you doing now? I know that you're focused on this, but maybe what is your next thing? And also, why is it never too late to pursue your passions? Like why is it never too late?
Well, I think when you look at some of the greatest artists and some of the writers, they've had their best contributions later in life, when they've acquired the skills and the confidence and no longer have that drive to say, I must prove anything. But I like the word rewired because it says, okay, if I was in a particular career, I don't have to spend the rest of my life or the next 5 years or the next 10 years doing that. I can rethink what I want to do. And what I do now, I spend a lot of time looking after my granddaughters, which is wonderful. And that's helping to raise the next generation of strong women. But I also am involved in nonprofit organizations, and I mentor a lot. I love mentoring. To me, that is one of the greatest gifts that we can give and receive, because when you mentor someone, a younger person, you learn so much too. I find it a great joy in doing mentoring. And I do it through formal programs, but I also do it through informal ways of mentoring. And I don't know what's coming in the next 5 years. I'm continuing to grow, and I leave the door open to possibilities when I'm approached about things. And I believe strongly in continuous learning, that I'm very keyed into, like, using Chat GPT or Perplexity and learning from those that are really into technology. Because if we stop learning, then we don't become relevant. We have a neighbor who doesn't have a cell phone. He would still have the old rotary phone if he could. Doesn't want the internet, doesn't want anything like that. So you've closed yourself off to a whole world.
It's fear, right? It's probably fear. Yeah. There's a lot of like, oh, AI and it's just going to take over the world and it's going to, but like you said, if you leave the door open for this learning and understand what the benefits of it and how can I improve as an individual, then that fear goes away, I think. Right.
I think it's the fear of change is what it is.
Yes.
And yet change is constant right now. And so if you're not comfortable with change, and you need to be comfortable with change, you're going to be left behind.
But you said that as we get older and we're open, if you're open to continuous learning and rewiring yourself, as you said, that because we don't, at this stage, we kind of, like you said, we don't have to prove ourselves. It's not like we're trying to climb up the ladder, whatever it is. Like it's more about expansion of self.
Yes.
And while we're expanding ourselves, as you said, we're giving back. So in your case, mentoring others to realize that, to learn from our experiences. So I feel like that's kind of the stage I'm in, because I was previous my corporate career, I was trying to climb a ladder, and now I'm like, hey, what is it? What I've learned in these years that
Mhm.
I'm doing this, I can give back as a coach and in your case as a mentor and all these programs that you're doing. So if you don't give back to all that you've learned, then why not? Right? Why not?
Exactly. I consider giving forward so that
Yes,
you move the
of
next
course.
generation forward or people.
Yes.
And I think it is sharing what we've learned.
Hmm.
And if that helps someone, terrific. And then I learn and you learn when we share and when we're
Yes.
talking to people in the next generations, we're keeping in touch. We're learning so much. I mean, and
Yes.
that's what that is, I
So
learn
it's
so
your,
much.
well, you're obviously passionate about it. I can tell from just your, from how you're describing it. So Claire, where can people find out more about your program and if they're interested in learning more about women's leadership and as a mentor, if you're available, I don't know if you could tell us how can people learn more about where you are.
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so people can get in
Yeah.
touch with me on LinkedIn, and I'll happily, I also have a website, and they can go on that website and find me there.
Yes.
But I'm definitely on LinkedIn, and I respond to LinkedIn
Yeah.
messages all the time. We run the program twice a year.
And is the
So
program for women who are in corporate, or does it matter, or is it anybody? Does it? No.
no, there's
Okay.
no specific industry. It's across all sectors. And it was generally designed for women in about mid to later leadership. But now we're finding that there are a lot of younger women coming on the program. And what I learned early on in the program, which has played out as we've gone along, leave the titles at the door. Everybody comes to that table and are equals. And it's been interesting because in this last program, I had one young woman say to me, I just planned on coming and listening because I don't have some of the experience that others. And I said, no, you have to participate in this program. You have something to contribute as well. Everybody does here. And that meant a lot to her. So she contributed a lot.
You told her to use her voice, right? Yes.
Using your voice, but
Yeah.
coming in
Yeah.
with an assumption just because you have less experience, you don't have anything to contribute, which is nonsense, of course.
Mhm.
We know
Mhm.
that.
Sounds wonderful. I love that. Leave your titles at the door. That's great. Maybe just like a little last word, like for women who are listening, primarily women who are right, kind of a lot of women who are listening to this podcast are feeling a little stuck, perhaps. Maybe they're not as fulfilled in what they're doing.
Mhm.
They're looking for the next step. What is next for them? And there may be a little bit of self-doubt. So
Yeah.
maybe just a last piece of advice.
Well, I think a piece of advice is to decide what you want to do, what really drives you, what is your passion, and what is your purpose more than anything else. Having a purpose is what gets you up every day. And if you're afraid, talk to people, talk to other people, share your thoughts. And is there someone who you can talk to who can say to you, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Because often when we're stuck, it's because we haven't thought of all the possibilities. And sometimes we can't. So having a mentor or a coach, and it doesn't matter what age or stage in life, someone else can help you by simply pointing out things. Because I remember one of my mentees, fairly along in her career, and she was stuck only because she didn't realize she could transfer her skills to other areas, and she thought she was in one place. So really, I mean, sometimes, and I've done this with others, to say, go sit under a tree. It's lovely there. And just really feel deeply what you want to do.
Yes, yes, yeah,
I spent a lot of time under trees, and I love nature. And of course, growing up on a farm, nature
yes.
has been my nurturer. And when I'm trying to figure something out, I can go and sit under that tree and say, what really is speaking to me now? What is calling me?
Yeah.
And that's how I got into the women's leadership by taking that time. I went to a park actually in southern Saskatchewan and just spent some time by myself, really saying,
Yeah.
what is, and
It's
this
about
was cool.
contemplation. Yeah, contemplation, and what I call it is, I'm sure you've heard the term is ikigai, or reason for being. What is your reason for being? How can we find it? And once you
Yeah.
find that, then the doors and possibilities open up.
And seek out your support. That's what you have a network for. They'll
Yes,
support you, help
yes,
you, open doors. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do some of the things I've done without my network. And of course, giving to your network. One of the things that I can do for mentees, and I know that others can too, is we connect them with people. I don't have all their answers, but I can connect them with people who can help them. And I often do that. And vice versa. I get requests to meet people and talk to them. And this is what we need to do. As women, we need to be supporting other women at all stages of their life and helping them move forward in any way that we can.
And this is why I had you on the podcast, so that we can learn about all these great things that you've done and also how you're giving back. So really appreciate everything that you've shared today, Claire. And if anybody's interested in your leadership program, I will have your website link and your LinkedIn linked as well in our show notes. And so they can reach out to you if they have any questions or want a mentor or anything like that. So thank you so much for being here today.
Well, it's a delight, Kavita. Thank you for having me on, and continue the great work that you're doing too.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I trust you enjoyed today's episode with Clare Beckton, and it helped you realize how your life can change if you take risks, face your fears, and use your voice with confidence as you face career and life transitions. The main takeaways are these. Number 1, believe in yourself. Women often hold themselves back by feeling not enough. Claire emphasizes that you are enough, and if you want something, go for it. You're ready now. Number 2, take risks and be open to opportunities. Claire's career highlights the importance of being open to unexpected opportunities and taking calculated risks to grow personally and professionally. And number 3, create your own network. Building a strong network can open doors for you and help you use your voice confidently as you lead in your career and your life. Thanks for listening. And don't forget, if you don't really know how fulfilled you are in your career or life, take my short career and life fulfillment quiz, which will give you an actual percentage fulfillment score. You will find out what your score actually means and what you can do about it now. If you're sitting on the sidelines of your life, now is a time to take action, my friend, and do something about it. Start by taking this quiz, which takes less than a minute to complete, and you'll find out what may be blocking you from moving forward. As always, my door is always open to you. Really like to have a real and raw conversation about your life. I call these breakthrough conversations because they truly are. It's an opportunity for you to speak with an unbiased person, and I will offer you my suggestions for how you can improve your life right now. It's simple. Just click the link to schedule your free breakthrough call with me today. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful start to September. Stay well and stay happy, my friend.